Welcome to the webinar here today. My name is Joe Schmitz. I'm a certified financial planner and I am the CEO of Peak Retirement Planning here in Columbus, Ohio. And so we're an independent RIA. We serve those who are in or near retirement, and we focus on comprehensive retirement planning, not just one area, but we really call it our 5-pillar approach to make sure that we're not missing anything. And that's one of the goals that we're going to talk about today is how do we make this Social Security decision from a comprehensive view versus just a very tunnel vision view. We want to look at all the different things that it could factor and impact when making that decision. And we're primarily going to talk about taxes, investment planning, and income planning when it comes to these decisions. So some of you may know me by the book that I wrote called I Hate Taxes. It was actually an Amazon bestseller in taxes and retirement planning. And so we're going to talk about taxes with your Social Security and how you can get your Social Security check tax-free. And so if you're looking for more information, this is a good resource that I would direct you to make sure you can get further, more specific help on tax planning and retirement, because in my opinion, I feel that taxes will be the biggest expense for the majority of Americans who have been diligent savers throughout their retirement. And so you need a plan now to be proactive to reduce that burden. Some of you may have also seen me on radio or TV. We do a lot of outreach in our firm to make sure that we can educate people on how to plan and retire comfortably. We just feel that not all advisors focus on that comprehensive planning, and so that's one area that we really focus on there. So with today's webinar, if you have questions, we have disabled the Q&A. So just to make everything private, we don't want anyone sharing it, oversharing information, but we do have that Q&A section available. So I think the chat's disabled, but the Q&A is available there. And so if you do have questions, you can put it in the Q&A. That is completely private. No one else will be able to see that. And then I'll try to get to some of those questions throughout the webinar today if I can. And if I don't reach out to your question today on the webinar, I will reach out to you personally to make sure that you get that detailed answer that you're looking for there. So our goal is that whoever's on this webinar, you leave this webinar, you get everything you need to make sure that you're in the best place possible moving forward. And another thing that we offer with these webinars is that you can actually schedule a call with our team if that's something you're looking for. And so our team will go ahead and pop up that Calendly link, so you can actually schedule a time through that. We'll pop it up at the end of the webinar too, but just so you know, if you're looking for further guidance, if you're looking for specific questions answered, we're more than happy to offer that assistance to you there, and that we won't charge for that call. We'll basically just get to know your situation, answer your questions, and just see if there's any other value we can add there, and see if there's anything that we see that you could be doing better with that call. So that's that there. With that being said, let's just go ahead and get started here. So the three things that we want to look at when it comes to Social Security planning is, one, when should I take it? We get this question a lot of, hey, should I take it at 62 or should I take it at 70? And obviously the answer is it's going to depend, but we're going to try to walk you through and talk about the pros and cons of each. The next thing that we often want to think about with Social Security is how much will you actually get? It's not how much you take in retirement, it's how much you keep. And so we're going to talk about how can we get this Social Security that you're entitled to have more of that in your pocket and less than Uncle Sam. So like I talked about in that book, I Hate Taxes. By the way, I don't hate taxes. I will pay my fair share. I love the libraries I use. I love the roads I drive on. I just don't want to owe more to the Uncle Sam. And I've never had anyone tell me, hey, Joe, I want to donate money to the IRS this year. I've never had any of our clients tell us that. And the reason why is because they all want to pay less. They don't want to pay more. And I don't know about you, but I don't think the government is the best steward of all of our tax-paying dollars. And so that's why I want to find ways to reduce taxes throughout retirement. And like I said, I think taxes are going to be the biggest expense. And so if we can get our Social Security check tax-free, I think that would be something that we all want to learn. So we're going to walk you through how you can actually get your Social Security tax-free by just following a few different steps to make sure that you can get to that point where you don't have to do so. So we help our clients a lot with this situation. Some of our clients have $1 million or more saved in tax-deferred investment, and when we first meet with them, that's their situation. But we're able to plan for them and make adjustments to make sure that when they get to retirement, when the money they pull out from their investments is tax-free, and they're able to keep Social Security tax-free as well. And so we're going to talk about that. All that money they've worked hard for is in their pockets and less in Uncle Sam's. The next one we're going to talk about is market volatility. Now, you're probably questioning, what does market volatility have to do with Social Security? Remember, all of this stuff plays together. And so when it comes to the stock market, for example, that's a roller coaster. The market goes up and down. And so what we typically see is that when people get closer to retirement, those who are in or near retirement, they typically want to take on less risk. Now, the problem is that not everyone is taking less risk because of the investments that they're in. And so we want to very much educate people to understand that Social Security is only going to account for about 40% of your income is what the average number is. So where are you going to get the rest of that 60%? Well, it could come from a pension, or if you don't have a pension, it's all going to come from your investments. And so if it's all going to come from your investments, what happens if the market's down and you need to take out money? That's what we would call it a double loss. And the question is do you have enough time to make that up? And if you're in or near retirement, you may not have as much time to make that up, which means that we need to make sure our investments are protected, and we need to decide when are we going to take from our investments. Are we going to take Social Security at 62 so that we take less from our investments at that time? Or are we going to wait till 70 to take Social Security? In that case, we really need to make sure that we can withdraw from our investments before then if we need money and if we plan on retiring before that age. So we're going to talk through all of that. And remember, like I said earlier, we think of a 5-pillar approach when it comes to retirement planning. The first one on your screen there, when should I take it? That has to do with income planning. That is when should I take Social Security so I can have an income that's going to be guaranteed for the rest of my life. Okay, and then number 3 plays a part of that because we're bringing in the investment plan to see how do we need to take from our investments to supplement our income, right? Everyone has these 401ks, these IRAs, and it's great while you're climbing that mountain, you're saving and you're working, but what happens when you actually need to take money out of that? And then the 2 is a tax planning part. So as you can see, income planning, investment planning, tax planning are going to be things that we really tie together today to make sure you understand the impact of all that, which will ultimately help you make that decision of when to take Social Security. The other 2 pillars of that 5-pillar approach are healthcare planning and estate planning. So not as applicable here today, but extremely important to your financial plan. So I'd make sure you write that down as you take notes here today, those other 2 pillars, to make sure that you're checking on that on your own to make sure you do have an estate plan. You know, what are you going to do? Do you have all your estate planning documents in place? Do you need a will? Do you need a trust, right? Do you need any advanced documents? Do you need a TOD on your house? Do you need a TOD on your car, which is a transfer on death? So making sure you have all that aligned. And obviously healthcare, what are you going to do to decide when to take Medicare and long-term care are going to be big decisions there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk further about this point number 1 is when should I take it? So as you all know, you can take Social Security anywhere between 62 and 70. Now, if we take it at 62, we're going to get a lesser amount. If we take it at 70, we're going to get a higher amount. And then full retirement age is 66 to 67. So that's when you're entitled to that benefit that you've been working for without any reductions. And so that's either 66, 67, depending on when you were born. And you can see on here on the screen that will tell you when that is. So let's talk through the pros and cons of each of these claiming options. Well, if we take it at 62, the pro is we receive our benefits now. We receive our benefits earlier. The negative is we don't have as much, right? We get a lesser amount, and if we're still working, then we get a reduction. And so if you're going to make about $21,000, $22,000 or more, then you'll start to see a reduction in your Social Security. If you make less than that, then you're good to go. You can make $15,000, you can still work, and you'll get your Social Security without any reduction to it. And so what we see is that if someone is between 62 and full retirement age, we may not see that they take their Social Security just so they can keep getting the deferred credits there, and also so they don't have to face any penalties. So that's the pros and cons of 62. Now you're probably wondering, when does everyone take Social Security? Well, most people take it at 62. Now that doesn't mean that's the right decision. I'm just telling you what most people do. And obviously if everyone's going to go jump off a cliff, you shouldn't either, especially knowing that most Americans do not understand financial planning. And so you want to make sure you're making a decision that's best for you. Full retirement age is the higher monthly check. So now you're going to get a higher amount than 62. And there's no penalty if you're employed at this point. So if you want to go out and make $1 million and you want to take Social Security, you're not going to face any reductions. Now you may have to pay taxes, as we'll talk about later, but there'll be no reductions. The negative of taking a full retirement age is obviously you go 5 years without benefits, 4 to 5 years without benefits. Who wants that? Who likes the idea of not getting that check knowing that we could get it? So that's the pros and cons of that one. And then 70, the pros are you're going to get the highest monthly check. So if you're looking to say, I want to maximize Social Security and get the most each month for the rest of my life, well, 70 would be what that is. And we had someone before say, I'm 73 and I have not taken Social Security yet, and I feel so good about it because I'm getting all these increases. Well, not really. Your increases are going to stop at 70, so make sure you take your benefit at 70. There's no benefit to wait until 73. At 70 as well, there's no penalty if you're employed, just like for retirement age. And then the negatives are 8 years without payments. Now that one hurts a little bit, doesn't it? Can you imagine? So you're 62, you could take a check, and then you go 8 more years. 8 years is a long time. That's 2 terms of presidency, and that you got to go without taking Social Security. And so you're probably asking yourself, why would I take it at 70? Well, because that highest monthly check is actually pretty generous. So if your full retirement age benefit is around $3,000 a month, I'm going to give you a little rundown of what it could be at 70 and what it could be at 62. So this one may be one you want to write down. So at full retirement age, if you're $3,000 a month, if you were to take that benefit at 62, you would get round numbers estimate, around $2,000 a month. So you'd get about 50% less than if you took it at 67 or full retirement age. Now, if you took it at 70, you get about $4,000 a month at that point. And so you can see $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 is what it would be. And so if you take it at 62 versus 67, you're getting 62 versus 70, you're getting half of what you could get at 70 if you just waited. So those are the pros and cons there. Now I know what you are thinking if you're big into math is what's the break even? When do I start making up for those 8 years without payments if I take it at 70? And the round numbers, anywhere between 80 to 83, depending on how you calculate it, is what most people will say, is when taking it at 70 starts to make sense. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. If you plan on living past age 83, take it at 70. If you plan to live before or pass away before age 80, well, you want to take your money now so you can get as many of those payments as possible. So that's not the only decision you should make. But I also joke with people, hey, if you just tell me when you're going to die, I'll tell you when the best time to take it is. I can do the mathematical equation. The problem is, though, is we don't know when the best time to take it is. And so we always say, when is the best time to take it? The magical word is it depends. And I have to quit saying that word because I had a guy at one of our workshops. He said, Joe, love the workshop, but you got to quit saying the word depends. You're talking to a bunch of old folks. So I've had to kind of clean up my language, but I still think it's a very applicable term to use because there's all these things that play a part. So one of those things that plays a part is what is your health? That's a big one in my mind. So if you're not doing as well health-wise, maybe more of a reason to take it earlier. Versus if you have a lot of longevity in your family, maybe you take it later. Some other considerations to decide, in that depends case for you, because I don't think you should just guess when to take Social Security, because taking Social Security at the wrong time can be $100,000 of difference of income. If you take it at the right time versus the wrong time, it could account for over $100,000 extra in your pocket. So we got to be very careful about what we do here. Now, what are some reasons why you would take it at 62? Well, maybe you need that money now. Maybe you don't have as much saved. Maybe that you have to take it. You don't have an option. So hopefully that's not you. Most of the people who attend these webinars, most of the people we work with, that's not the case. But that could be a reason to take it earlier rather than later. Another reason to take it, is based on your spousal income. So the spousal benefit, So the spousal benefit says that if that spouse one is $3,000 a month, spouse two, if maybe they never paid into Social Security, maybe they never worked, they could still get half of spouse one. And so they could get $1,500. Spouse one could get $3,000. So the total family benefit is $4,500, where you may have only thought you're getting $3,000, right? So there can be some claiming decisions of that. Understand for the spousal benefit that $3,000, if you waited till 70, an example we've been using, that spouse wouldn't get $2,000 or $4,000. They would still only get $1,500 because they could only get up to half of the full retirement age benefit. Also understand that spousal benefit couldn't pay out until that first spouse starts to claim and file that check. So if they wait till 70 to claim that, or let's say they wait till 67 and spouse two wants to take it at 62, they can't turn that on at 62. They have to wait till they claim at 67 and then they can claim half of theirs. So that's the spousal benefit. Another consideration is what we call the survivor benefit that we'll talk about a little later throughout the workshop. But the survivor benefit says that if one spouse passes away, the other spouse gets to keep the higher of the two benefits. So let's say that was $3,000, that was $1,500. If this spouse passes away, this spouse would get $3,000. Now, they wouldn't get that $4,500. They'd only get $3,000. So one of the Social Securities would drop off, but they would get the higher of the two. So maybe your goal is, I want to leave the most guaranteed income. Well, maybe you take it at 70 so that your spouse can be left with the highest possible amount guaranteed ongoing. Could be a strategy you look at as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of different decisions to make, but I just wanted to sum up. Those are just some of the key ones to keep in mind. So next question is when it comes to taking it at 62 and 70, let's say that you want to take it at 70. Well, if we did that, then as you can see on the screen, we're making a decision to take out of our investments and waiting to take out from Social Security. So when we go to take income in retirement, these are the two places that most people go to: Social Security and investments. Now, we could take from Social Security first, and we can let our investments grow, or we can let our Social Security grow and take our investments up front. So which would be the pros and cons of doing this? Well, one of the big ones that we see is because with a lot of the people we work with, they've got a lot of money saved in tax-deferred investments, is maybe we need to start depleting that. And maybe now is a good time to start depleting it, considering that tax rates right now, believe it or not, are among the lowest that we've seen in history. Tax rates right now are on sale, which is what I talk about in that book, I Hate Taxes. And so now could be an opportunity to start drawing down those investments at lower tax rates, and also before our Social Security kicks in. So now we have a lower income. We basically have no income. And then we can let our Social Security grow over time so that when we do take our Social Security, we're not going to have to take as much out from our investments, which is going to allow that Social Security to be tax-free and allow our total lifetime tax bill to be much lower as well. So that's the concept that we're going to talk about here next, is the impact of taxes. Now, I know everyone here loves taxes, right? I know everyone, doesn't have, I'm kidding. Everyone has that look when it comes to taxes, right? And we all want to pay less. And so that's why I wrote that book called I Hate Taxes. And that's where we're going to open up the pages here and talk about that chapter I wrote on Social Security and how to keep your Social Security taxes in check there. So when it comes to Social Security tax, it's a little different. So first understand that Social Security used to not be taxable. So if you went back to the 70s, back before 1980s, Social Security used to be tax-free. So when you receive that check that you've worked hard for your entire life, nothing goes to Uncle Sam. All that money is in your pocket. Well, now today, people have to pay taxes on Social Security. Not everyone, though. There's two people who do not pay taxes on their Social Security check. One is those who are poor. So if you have a lower income and you are poor, you don't have to pay taxes on your Social Security. The second type of person is those who have a lower income, who aren't poor, but they're smart. And so we have multiple clients, and I'll share one example that we'll talk about here throughout the workshop or through the webinar here today, is they have $1 million in tax-deferred dollars when we met them, and now they pay no taxes on their Social Security, and we expect them not to pay any taxes on their Social Security moving forward. And why is that the case? Because we've been able to plan now and be proactive and start to take some of these tax-deferred investments and transfer them over to tax-free, and to do so now while tax rates are on sale. So we're going to talk through that concept here, but let's first understand how and when is Social Security taxable. So Social Security goes off of your provisional income, and so your provisional income is a list of all these things here added up. So if you add up all these items here, that gives your provisional income. So we can actually do this as a group here. So you can just, as you're taking notes, just put in what your specific situation is. So half of Social Security, so let's say that you're entitled to $50,000 benefit, half of that is $25,000. Ordinary income, so that's going to be your income from working if you're still working. This is going to be any IRA distributions. This is going to be the magical RMD, the required minimum distribution, if you're at that age of taking those forced distributions out of your IRAs. It's going to be any pensions that you may have. And then you have your capital gains and dividends. That's going to be from your non-qualified type investments. These are the ones that spit off a capital gain, your dividend each year. And so that would be counted towards this income, this provisional income here. And then non-taxable interest. Not everyone has that. It's mostly like muni bonds and things like that. That will be counted towards this calculation. So if you take all those up, you add them up, and then you go to our next slide here, it's going to tell us how much of your Social Security benefit is going to be taxed as income. And so you'll see here, if you're married filing jointly, So if you're single, you'll follow this one. If you're married, over here. If it's under $32,000, then you won't pay any tax on your Social Security benefit. Okay, so that would mean that, let's say that $50,000, let's say that was all you had as income. That's $25,000 as your provisional income. You're under $32,000. None of that is going to count as income. You kept your Social Security tax-free. Now, if you start to increase your income into here or here, you'll start to see that up to 50% or up to 85% of your Social Security amount could be taxable as income. So if you had $10,000 of Social Security benefit, up to $8,500 could be counted as income towards your income brackets. And so that can cause you to pay more in taxes by this calculation. And so that's how this works. So the way this works from I like using hand movements. Some people really get this more than the chart. And so if your income is between here and here, that 0% bracket, you don't pay any tax on your Social Security. As soon as your income starts to reach here and goes up, you start to pay more in tax on your Social Security benefit. And then you hit something that I really want to drill on today called a Social Security tax torpedo. And if you find yourself in this Social Security tax torpedo, you could be paying a 40 to 50% tax rate. And we're going to show you an example here today of one of our clients that actually could have been realistic if we didn't plan the right way. And so we want to avoid hitting that torpedo, where, as you can see here, up to 85% of our benefit is taxable. And so the way we do that is by showing the IRS we have a lower income throughout retirement. Now, how do we do that? By making sure that we can take from tax-free vehicles, by making sure our Social Security is tax-free, by making sure we can plan proactively and not let the Uncle Sam or IRS decide what our tax bill is going to be when we take out money in retirement. The other thing I really want you to understand is that this chart has not changed since 1985. This is what we call a stealth tax. And a stealth tax is when the government does not make changes that you can see, but it negatively impacts you. For example, these numbers here on these charts, they should be much higher, meaning that less of your Social Security should be taxable. But since they've never changed these, so many people are able to hit this Social Security tax torpedo so quickly without having to take out much money from their investments. And so that's why this is more of an issue than ever before from a planning standpoint, because they haven't given us any room to plan for in the last nearly 30 years. So a lot of opportunity here, and we need to make sure we're planning for this. So let's talk about now of how do we keep our provisional income lower. And so, like I said, our goal is to get Social Security tax-free. So how do we do that? Well, we need to first understand, where do we have our money saved with retirement? So most people have their money in tax-deferred vehicles, 401k, IRAs, 403b, any of these vehicles where you have not paid taxes on yet, so that when you take out money, you've got to pay taxes. So when you put that $10,000 in up front, you got a tax savings, a tax deduction. But now this $10,000 is worth $100,000, and when you take out $100,000, what happens? Well, you're going to have to pay taxes on that $100,000. So we save on 10, but we pay on 100. And so we have to understand, with this tax deferred investment, we have a partner on this investment with you. Who is that a partner? Well, I'll tell you a story. We had a guy come in, he had $1 million in his 401k, and he said, let's do this, I'm ready to retire. And I told him, I said, I see your statement here, but you're missing a name next to yours. Whose name is that? Good old Uncle Sam. And so we just have to understand that he's going to get his fair share of taxes paid, but the question is it truly going to be his fair share? Is it going to be his fair share or your fair share? How much is he actually going to get? And the answer is, we don't know, because we have no control over what tax rates will be. And so the question I ask people is, do you think tax rates will be higher or lower in the future? And I've never had someone tell me they'll be lower. And so if you think they're lower, reach out to me, put in the Q&A, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But I've never seen anyone say that they're going to be lower. And the reason why people don't think tax rates are going to be lower is for two reasons. One, tax rates are among the lowest that we've seen in history. The highest tax bracket today is 37%. If you go back to the 70s or 1981, for example, the highest bracket was 70%. We're in a historically low tax rate environment right now, and we've got a lot of money in debt currently in our country. Our country is over $30 trillion in debt. There is more interest due on our debt right now than there is revenue coming in. And so how are we going to pay down this debt crisis? Well, we need more revenue, or we need to reduce spending. As you all know, we're probably not going to reduce spending, so revenues have to rise. How do they do that? By increasing taxpayers on the American taxpayer. And so if that's going to happen, what is going to happen to your tax bill throughout retirement? It's probably going to go up, especially knowing that not only your federal tax rate is going to go up, but also the taxes on your Social Security are going to go up. The amount you pay for your Medicare is going to go up. Capital gains can go up. Phase in and out of deductions, credit, net investment. There's all these things that can play a part to make sure that you pay more in taxes in retirement than what you want to. And so we have to plan against that. So if you have all your money in tax deferred, this is where I step in and say, I'm not here to beat you up. I'm actually here to tell you that you've probably made the right decision over all of those years. When you first did this, this was probably the greatest thing you could have done and the thing that you should have done. But I'm here to point out today to tell you that this may not be the best position for your investments today. And the reason why is because, hey, when you did this, tax rates are high and that's great. And so when you did this, you said, I'm going to invest it here so that I can pay lower taxes in the future. And you were probably right. And especially if you do this right now, you were right, because right here is where we were, but right here is where we're now. And if you all think that tax rates are going to be higher in the future, shouldn't we pay our taxes on these vehicles now versus later? Should we pay our taxes now or defer them until a higher rate in the future? And so that's what we're trying to talk about here today, is that we see a lot of people with a lot of money in tax deferred. And so what we're going to educate you on is, should we start to transfer some money out? Should we start to make adjustments to better plan for the moving forward that we're going to be seeing? And so what we really want to introduce to you today is what we call the tax-free investment, the tax-free bucket. So many different opportunities in the tax-free bucket, but what we're really going to talk about in our time today is the Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is tax-free when you take money out, but when you put that money in, there's no tax deduction. There's no tax savings. So let's say you put in $10,000, you don't like it, you don't get any savings, but when this thing grows to $100,000 and you take out $100,000, you don't pay any taxes on that money you put in. And so we ask people often, hey, if you had a magic wand, where do you want all your money? And obviously everyone says tax-free. Well, where does everyone have their money though? And that's tax deferred. And so there is way more money in tax deferred than there is in tax free. I've heard that there's $40 trillion in tax deferred, and there's less than $1 trillion in tax free. So why do we not have more money there? Well, one of the big reasons is just education, and then there's some other reasons as well. But that's why we're here today, is to learn. And so I'm going to tell you about an opportunity that you can start shifting money from tax deferred to tax free right now, today. And this strategy is called a Roth conversion. So if you have not done a Roth conversion or you haven't looked at it, I would highly recommend you write this one down. And it's just simply moving money from tax deferred to tax free. And this is something that we're doing with the majority of our clients right now who have been diligent savers. And the reason why is because tax rates are lower and we're expecting them to go up. Now, if you have, here's kind of a rule of thumb to see if this strategy is going to make sense for you or not. So we've actually done a study on this. And so if you have $250,000 or less in tax deferred vehicles over here, then a Roth conversion may not make as much sense for you, because you're not going to have a huge tax burden throughout retirement, and you may always be in those either lower brackets or what we call the 0% bracket by keeping your income tax-free. Now, if you have $250,000 to $1 million, a Roth conversion can start to make sense for you. Obviously not moving everything to the Roth, but little bits here and there can make a lot of sense for your situation, to make sure that you can keep Social Security tax-free, to make sure that you can keep Medicare at the lowest tiers, to make sure that you can stay in those lower brackets. And so that could make sense for you. And then if you have $1 million or more, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million or more, you don't really have an option in my mind when it comes to Roth conversions. My biggest advice to you is make sure you get going now while the tax rates go, before they go up in 2026. By the way, I haven't covered that. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires in 2026. Tax rates are going up to where they were. And so most Americans will see a 20% increase in the amount of taxes they're paying each year. And so we want to try to get some of this heavy lifting done during this current tax sale before it goes up. So that's just something you want to make sure you write down and make sure you're being proactive about this. And so that's the idea of a Roth conversion. And again, why does it make sense if you have $1 million or more to do this? Is because when you're forced to take out money from your IRA in retirement, the amount you're going to be forced to take out is going to force you into higher brackets. It's going to force your Social Security to become taxable. And so we need to start taking a proactive approach at this now before it gets worse. Okay, so it's kind of like that snowball. If we just let it keep going and going and going, it gets worse and worse. And we need to make sure we capture that now. So that's the idea of a Roth conversion. So let me just put it in simple terms. I'm from a very rural community. There's 500 people in my village. There's one traffic light. Sometimes it works. And it's a farming community. And so my best friend down there, he's a farmer, and he has an apple orchard. And so I asked him, would you rather pay tax on the seed that you plant or the harvest that you reap? And obviously he said the seed, because it's a lot less. And so this is the same idea with you and your investments. Would you rather pay the tax on it today at lower rates before it grows, or later at higher rates while your investment has doubled, tripled, quadrupled over time? And so that's the idea when it comes to doing Roth conversions, is when do you want to pay the tax? Do you want to pay it now, or do you want to pay it later? So hopefully that analogy there can help you really summarize of what this means. And when it comes to Roth conversions, I think I mentioned it earlier, but just to make it clear, we don't typically recommend everyone to convert every dollar they have to Roth. We typically want to do little bits over time at the lowest brackets. We don't want to do too much to cause us to pay too high of tax rates, but we don't want to do too little conversions or no conversions to where we're not taking advantage of lower brackets here today that we may never see again. So there's a specific science to understand how much, and there's a lot of decisions to make. So again, my advice is to get help from a professional. Yes, you can do this on your own, but I almost guarantee you're not going to be able to maximize it. So please take my advice. We see a lot of people that try to do this on their own, but they don't understand how Social Security plays a part. They don't understand Medicare premium tiers. They don't understand that, should we convert $100,000 or $10,000, and what's the impact of doing so or not doing so if we look out 10 years. So a lot of our clients, we build out a 10-year tax plan, or even longer if we need to really get an idea of what are taxes going to be for them today, and what are their true taxes going to be in the future. What are their RMDs, their Social Security, maybe a pension? How is that all going to play together in deciding on what we need to do today? So there's a lot of moving parts to decide how to Roth convert. If you're thinking I'm just going to go out and convert $100,000 and I'm just feel good about it, I'm going to guess you're probably not maximizing things, because everyone's situation is going to be very different there of how much you should convert, and typically it changes every year depending on rule changes, tax law changes, all of that fun stuff. So again, just be very, very particular there. I know I made it sound very easy, but I just want to make sure I'm adding a disclosure to that to make sure that nobody goes out there and tries to do it and then is upset when they look down the road in a few years. So hopefully that helps everyone give a better understanding. All right, so here's a fun little one I'm going to show you. So this is actually a story from one of our clients, and we're going to share two people here. And we're going to show Bill, who is not one of our clients, who did not listen to any advice, and he just took what's called the IRS's plan. So Bill needs $100,000 to live on each year. And so we're going to show you that if Bill takes out $100,000 a year, what does that look like? And then we're going to show you Jill over here and showing how she took $100,000 out. And we're going to talk about what each of them did differently. They each have the same situation. We're just going to talk about how they did it differently and what their total tax bill is. So in Bill's case, he took Social Security at 62. He just said, I'm status quo. I'm going to do what everyone else does. And because of that, he got a lesser Social Security check. And then he just had all of his money in his 401k and his IRA. And as we all know, when we take out from our IRA, what happens? It causes taxes. And so since Bill had to take so much out from his IRA, he forced his Social Security. Remember how I talked about 0%? Now Social Security starts to become more taxable. Now we hit the torpedo. Well, Bill forced his Social Security to become into torpedo because he had to take out so much from his IRA. And because of that, Bill had to pay about $9,000 in taxes. Now, think about this. You are no longer working. You're taking money from your investments, Social Security, and you still have to give $9,000 to the IRS each year. I don't know about you, but I don't like that idea. I think that is a lot of money to give to the IRS every single year. So what is something that we could do here to reduce our taxes? Well, let's introduce Jill. And so Jill is going to follow what we call her plan. And this is what you have the opportunity to do, is your plan. So when we talk about tax planning and income planning and retirement, you can either have the IRS's plan or you can have your plan. And why do we say it that way? Because this is being lazy and not taking action. And this is being proactive and doing the work now so that you can enjoy what you worked so hard for. And so Jill chose to do her plan, obviously. It's in my mind, not to be biased, but that's the best opinion, to do that I would think everyone should do. And so under your plan, we just did two differences here. One is we decided to take Social Security at 70 versus 62. Now, like I said earlier, that's not a recommendation. This isn't saying that everyone should do this, but for Jill's situation, she was okay waiting that long knowing the benefits she could get from it. Okay? The other change that we made here is that instead of having all of our money come out from Roth, we decided to have some diversification. To have all of our money come out from IRA, we decided to have some diversification so that money could come out from Roth as well. And so we wanted a balance there. And so as you can see with Jill's situation, here's the breakdown. More comes from Social Security since we took it at 70. And then you can see the split we had here because now we were able to plan for moving money over to the Roth, as talked about earlier, in the Roth conversion and other strategies like that. And so here's the point I'm trying to drive home here. Does anyone here have all their money in Bitcoin maybe? You can just put in the Q&A if you do or not. Of course not. Everyone has all their investments in different buckets. You may have some Bitcoin, but you have it diversified. You don't have all your money in one asset. Well, that's the way I think we should have our tax plan set up. The problem is that most people do not have diversification in their tax plan. Most people only have money in tax deferred. And so if you need $50,000 in retirement, you're forced to pay that as income versus if we had an IRA and a Roth. Now we can choose where that $50,000 comes from, and we can make sure to take appropriately based on whatever tax rate we may fall in. So it gives us more control and flexibility to pay the taxes that we really want to pay throughout retirement. And so you're probably wondering why we had this particular type of setup here. And before I show you, I want you to guess of how much tax they have to pay. How much tax does Jill and her husband have to pay on this case? The answer is $0. How are they living a tax-free retirement? How are they not paying a dime in tax at this point? And there's two reasons why, as I just shared. Taking Social Security at 70 allowed us to take more from Social Security and less from our investments. Okay? Because that's the case, we were able to keep Jill, because she took money from a Roth as well, we were able to keep her IRA and her provisional income low enough so that her standard deduction, which depending on your situation is probably around $30,000 if you're married. If you're over age 65, about around 30, somewhere around there. And so if that's the case, she could take out $30,000 and not pay any tax on it. And so what we're able to structure with Jill's plan is we're able to keep her plan so that when she took out that $30,000, that count as income, that's all it stayed at was $30,000, nothing more. And so anything extra above that point, we just took from our Roth. And remember, if we would have taken out more than $30,000, not only would we cause her federal tax brackets to start to slip up, but we'd also start to force Social Security to become more taxable. And now we're causing a double havoc to their tax plan. And so because we strategically set it up in this way, that money they took out tax-free was at their benefit and their favor there. So again, our recommendation is to make sure you have an income plan set so that you understand how all this works together. Again, this isn't a recommendation of taking Social Security at 62, at 67. The reason I'm showing this in illustration is to show you the impacts of how you take out money in retirement. If you just go status quo, you're going to be stuck with that plan moving forward. If we have more flexibility, now we can really choose which way we want to take money out from. How much do we want to take out from Roth? How much from our IRA? And so that's really the idea when you look at income planning moving forward. So just make sure you're taking a really hard look at this. This is one of my favorite slides. I think this analogy is really, really good to understand. And so it leads me to this point, just to really summarize this point here. So you probably think, we often ask, is this the retiree's tax bracket? When I plan for retirement, do I just need to look at the 2024 tax rates and that's it and nothing else? Well, I mean, you could, but I think you're missing a lot. And as we just illustrated, this federal income tax rate does not show where Social Security starts to become taxable and when it starts to become hitting that torpedo. This federal income tax rate does not show when Medicare premiums start to become more costly as your income rises. It doesn't show capital gains rate. It doesn't show anything besides federal income. So if I'm you and I'm in retirement or near retirement, I'm making sure that I understand that tax planning is much more in depth than this. And so what we really want to educate people on is understand what the real retiree's tax bracket is. Understand what your effective tax rate is going to be in retirement, not just from a federal standpoint, but a federal, a state, a Social Security, a Medicare, capital gains. How much total tax will we have to pay based on the extra money we take out from our investments. And so this chart really does a good job of really explaining things. And this is actually a software that we use for our clients to decide how much should we Roth convert now, what is their income going to look like in the future, if we were to take out an extra $10,000 for that trip, how much tax are we going to have to pay for that. And so it really does helps with all those different areas there. And so I'm going to walk you through this chart here, as I've already kind of touched on these points, but this chart will just do a really good job of bringing it all together so you understand how everything works together. So first thing I want to show you is these dotted lines here. Those are Medicare premium tier increases. So in this client's case, if they were to take out $100,000 from their IRAs or pension or whatever it may be, then they would have to pay another $1,000 each for Medicare premiums. And if their income continues to rise and rise and rise, they're going to have to pay way more in Medicare premiums. So for those who have been a great diligent saver, for those who have $2 million or more and they're tax deferred, you're going to hit these Medicare premium tiers pretty quickly if you don't do any planning. And so for you, that's why this planning is so important for you. So this chart will show us, if we're going to be there or not based on how much we're projected to take out. And then you'll see this little gap here. You see this 0% here? That is that standard deduction that I just showed you. So if we come here to the standard deduction, you'll see for married, it's $29,200 if you're under age 65. And so basically what that shows us is that if your income is under that, not only will you pay no federal taxes, but you're going to be in that 0% provisional income as well, and you're not going to have to pay any taxes. Now, as soon as you start to reach above that, not only are you paying the federal tax rates, which is below here, but you're also starting to force Social Security to be taxable. And remember how I did my little hand movements earlier, how I said, hey, if you're here, 0%, and then if you start to increase your income, you'll start to force Social Security to become more and more taxable. Well, that's what I'm showing with the purple. And then remember how I said, then you could get here, and then there's this big tax, and it's a Social Security tax torpedo. This illustrates that you could pay a 40 to 50% tax rate at this point, because not only are you paying federal taxes, you're paying Social Security tax on 85% of your benefit, and then also you could force capital gains to be taxable too if you have those. Capital gains could be 0% up to a certain income, and then it turns into 15%. But if we force our income high enough, we'll never be able to see our capital gains at 0%, and you're always going to force that red in there to come in. And so not only if you have your income go from here to here, not only you're forcing your Social Security to be fully taxable, you're forcing yourself into a 22% bracket, you're forcing your capital gains to become taxable, and that can be a big, big issue. And so that's why we really want to make sure we're planning for people to either keep their income at here or lower in retirement, or here in that 0% bracket. And so for most of our clients, we're able to get them to this position by planning efficiently now to keep them in these lower brackets here. And then if you're in a situation where, hey, maybe we can't get you down to this level, our next goal is let's make sure we're not paying more taxes than we need to ongoing on Medicare premiums, on net investment income, and all these different other taxes that play a part in those higher income sections there. So that's kind of the gist of it, but just to understand that when it comes to income planning and tax planning and retirement, we want to kind of try to keep our income lower so that we can have more control, and because you're going to be paying more in taxes in retirement than now is my guess. And if you look at this chart here, let's just go right here, which is about $25,000. At this point, you could be paying about 30% in taxes just by taking out $25,000 from your investments. Now, most people are going to be taking out $25,000 from their investments. If you have $500,000 or more, your RMD is going to force you to take out about that bare minimum from your investments. And so my point in here is that if right now, what I just showed you, tax rates are 12%, 22%, 24% for most people, right? If your taxable income is $383,000 plus that, so if your income is about $420,000, about $410,000, then you could have an opportunity to pay a lower tax on your investments today by doing those Roth conversions than what you may pay on it in retirement at 30%. Even though your federal tax bracket may only be 12 or 15%, you got to remember that each effective tax, it's each dollar above that you're taking out. And so if that's the case, would you rather pay 24 or 30? Would you rather pay 12 or 22 or 30? And so those are the type of calculations we're trying to do to understand, should you be doing this Roth conversions right now? Because if we do them now, maybe that means we can keep our Social Security tax-free moving forward, or less tax, which means more money in your pocket, more money to spend, more money left over to grandkids, less worry in retirement is obviously the goal we're trying to achieve. So hopefully that's a helpful one there for you as for when it comes to tax planning with your Social Security and how to get it tax-free. All right, so here's one last one I want to talk about when it comes to that tax planning ideas. When it comes to the widow's penalty, I think this is something that everyone should be aware about. So we've already talked about this, but if you're married, you get both Social Securities. And then we have our RMD here that we've already talked about. This is just the investment income there that would be coming into them after they turn RMD age. And so with this case, they'd be paying about $11,000 in taxes if they're married. So I want to talk about two things here of what happens if one spouse passes away. The first thing that we've already talked about is that we lose one of the Social Securities. So investments will stay the same. Those will just move over to the spouse, but one of the Social Securities goes away. So as you see here in this example, their income is lower if they're single. What is the other difference here that if you're single versus married comes when you look at taxes? So if you're married filing jointly, tax brackets are more generous than if you're single. And so under the single brackets, I can just show you on this screen here, you'll see that it's almost half of what it could be. So if your taxable income is $85,000 and you're married, you're paying 12%. If you're single and $85,000, you're paying 22%. Also, the standard deduction gets cut in half. And so because of all those things, you're going to be paying more money in taxes if you're single. You could be paying nearly double the amount of taxes is what we could see. And if that's the case, not only do you have a lower income, but you have a higher tax bill, right, because of that married filing jointly to single transition. And so as you can see here, less income, but more taxes. So my point in showing you this widow's penalty idea is, one, make sure you're making that decision of when to take Social Security based on this decision, based on understanding that they're going to lose portion of their income from not getting the other Social Security, but also an understanding that they're going to have to pay more in taxes in the future, which makes those Roth conversions and things like that even more important if your goal is to leave money to your spouse. Do not let your spouse pay double the amount of taxes or nearly double the amount of taxes by poor planning. Make sure you be proactive before you be letting the government get more of your money than what they should. And again, spouses, males typically live less than females. And so if you're married, females, making sure you're aware of this, making sure your spouses are taking care of this from a planning standpoint is going to be extremely, extremely important there. Just worry about this before it's too late. It's my advice. One spouse typically passes away first, and we can't plan for it if it's too late. All right, so as we transition to this last point here before we close up and try to get some questions answered, I want to talk about the market volatility concept. So I've already talked about this, is that, hey, Social Security is only going to cover about 40% of our benefit on average of our total income that we need, and then the other 60% is going to come from other income sources, as you can see on the screen there. And so we need to make sure that our investments are set up in a way so that we can take those 60% from our investments. And so that's why we really come to the mountain analogy here. So our firm, Peak Retirement Planning, we help help people get down the mountain throughout retirement. So people who are in or near retirement are sitting up here right at the top. And they need to get down retirement and really focus on these 5 pillars that we've talked about today. So when you look at it, what got you here to the top of the mountain may not get you there. So if you've been investing for growth all of your working years, that's great, but is that what's going to get you down the mountain throughout retirement? Or do we really want to look to get more safe and stable and protected with the life savings that we've accumulated to make sure that we don't have what I call a double loss? So in retirement, when you need money, you have one loss because you have to take money out. And then if the market's down, that would be a double loss. So we have 2 losses. And my question is do we have enough time to make it up? And so you have to look at your situation and think, do I have as much time until the finish line than I did when I was 30 years old? And if you feel you don't have as much time, maybe we need to get more protected with the money that we have saved. And what we typically see is that most people take on more risk than they need to in retirement. You may not need more money at this point. You may just need a better plan so you don't run out of money by not taking any extra risks that you don't need to take. And so that's one of the biggest advice we give to you is, hey, 1, decide when you should take Social Security. 2, make sure you're not paying way more in taxes than you need to. And 3 is making sure your investments are structured in a way that you can take out money that is protected, but also making sure that you preserve what you saved over all these years. So those are the three biggest advice items that I'll give you based on Social Security claiming decisions that we want you to be aware of. And the last thing I want you to be aware of before we get into questions here is understanding how all five of these pillars work together. So we talked about these three pillars, very, very detailed today. And these are three extremely important ones. And then we also have healthcare planning and estate planning. And so when it comes to these five pillars, the question I have for you as you leave this webinar is, are you getting help with all five of these? Or are you just working with an advisor who's only focused on investment planning? And I would very much encourage you to really, rate your level of concern on each of these pillars. Are you a 1 through 10? Where do you sit? Are you an 8, 9, or 10, or are you a 1 through 6? And I wouldn't advise you choose a 7 because that's just an average, and who wants an average retirement? And so if you're an 8, 9, or 10 on each of these topics, you're good to go. You've got that retirement that you're looking for. But if you are a 1 through 6 and you feel like you may be missing some of the things that we've talked about today, then that's where I'd really advise you, make sure you're getting help. If it's not from us, just make sure you're getting some help from someone who does the type of planning that we're doing so that you're not missing anywhere. And if you do like our help or you are looking for additional help, then I'll go ahead and have our team pop up our calendar link so that you can actually schedule a call with our team. Again, with this call, we're not going to charge you for it, but we want to make sure that we can add any specific value that you're looking for. And so during that call, we'll just get to know your questions, see what you have on your mind, and we'll try to take you through an analysis to show you and see, hey, what is best for you to do? Is there anything that we see here that you could be doing differently? And at the end of that call, we typically get people that say, hey, I'm looking for further help. Can you help us further? And if that is you, then yes, we could explore further what it looks like to work with us and show you a little more of our capabilities and talk a little bit more further about your situation. But I do want to make it very clear. We do a lot of outreach for our community, and we try to help as many people as we can. But at the end of the day, we can't serve everyone. So we do have a boutique firm, which means we deliver a higher level service to a specific type of client that we serve best. And so the typical clients that we work with are those who are in or near retirement, those who have been diligent savers, and those who are really looking for more comprehensive help moving forward with their retirement. More of that hands-off, more of that white glove, making sure that they get this stuff taken care of so that they can retire and live that successful retirement that they've been dreaming of. So if that's you, feel free to schedule that. Again, I'll have a team pop that up there to make sure you can schedule a call with our team here to see how we can give you further guidance there. So with that said, let me go ahead and answer some further questions here. And it looks like some of you have already scheduled that. So if I don't get to your questions, I'll try to answer those on that call that you schedule with us. So just understand that there's a lot of questions here. I'm going to get there as many as I can here. And the last, it looks like we've got 5 minutes or so. So I'll make sure we get all those covered. So first question I had here was, why has no one told me about a Roth? So I guess there's a few things to understand here. I think it just goes on the concept I just talked about is your advisor a investment planner or they do comprehensive planning? And I don't know if you're working with an advisor or not, but typically what we see is we see a lot of people who are only working with an investment advisor and they're just helping them with one of the 5 areas. And, honestly, they may be overpaying for what they're getting there. And so our advice would be to work with someone else. So that may be one reason. The other reason is a Roth hasn't been around forever. A Roth hasn't been around since 1997. And a Roth 401k didn't exist until 2006. And so you may not have had these opportunities to start saving into Roth. And so what I try to always advise people of is, hey, don't worry about trying to change the past. You can't change it, but you can change the future. And you do that by starting now. And now is the best time to get into Roth, in my opinion, because tax rates are lower and they're set to be higher. And so if you haven't done anything, don't beat yourself up. Just be proactive and get to work, right? And the best time to start is right now. I've never had anyone come and see us and say, man, I wish I would have gotten started later. They all say, I wish I would have gotten started earlier. So hopefully that's motivational and encouraging to you that it's not too late and it's never too early to get started. So hopefully that helps answer that question there for you. Here's a good, should everyone do a Roth conversion? So I think I covered this already, but just to talk about it further. So if you have $250,000 or less, that would be a reason why maybe you don't do a Roth conversion. It could still make sense, don't get me wrong, but we just wouldn't see as many people needing that in that realm. $250 or more, really start looking at the Roth conversions. If you're a high net worth individual, you have $1 million or more, highly encourage you to look at that if that's you, because that's where it can really start to make sense. Other reasons why you should not do a Roth conversion. Let's talk about that here a little bit. It may help you. So if you're charitable minded, you want to watch moving all your money to a Roth, because you can actually give money from your IRA starting at age 70 and a half to charities tax-free. That's something we do with the majority of our clients who are giving at that point. And so making sure you have enough money in that tax deferred bucket for things like that is extremely important. So we don't want to convert everything. And so with most of our clients, we don't recommend they convert everything. It's obviously going to depend on their situation, but we typically want more of a balance there so that we don't know what tax rates are going to do in the future. Yeah, they could go up. Yeah, they could go down. We have no idea. So we want to position ourselves in a way to have that diversification, that balance, and see what is, to have that control. So again, it could be 50-50, but it's going to be different for every single person of what that true balance is needed. Some of our clients, they only may need 10% in tax-free for it to make sense. Other our clients, they may need 90% in tax-free for it to make sense. So it just depends on your case there. All right. So the question here is, can we schedule time with your firm? So I'll go ahead and have the team pop up that. Again, that may have been asked earlier, but I see some of you have already scheduled that, so that's great. Looks like to be working there, so we'll make sure that we can get that scheduled here on our calendar. All right, let's see what other questions are here. Is there an RMD on the Roth? No, great question. So there is no RMD on the Roth. So if you have your money in a Roth, you're not required to take that money out at 73 now is that age, or 75, depending on when you're born. In a Roth, you can just let it keep growing tax-free. So a lot of people like that idea. Now, if you pass away, and let's say you left it to your kids would have to take that out over 10 years, but they wouldn't have to pay taxes on it, and they could wait till that 10th year to pull it out, get as much tax-free growth during those 10 years. So eventually it would have to get out of there, but that's a pro tip to make sure you can keep as much of it growing tax-free as possible. All right, let's see what other questions we have here. What is it like working with your firm? So I want to make sure we try to get to the other questions here, but again, the 5-pillar approach is what it looks like to work with our firm. So we have that discovery session, that call, and then basically what we do with a lot of the people we work with is we'll send them a video explaining what it looks like to work with us, explaining that, hey, if they do nothing or if they do something, what does that look like? And then from there, we look to make a decision if we're the right fit to work with them or not. And if not, no big deal. We'll shake hands as friends. We're not here to help everyone. But if it does make sense, then we'll go ahead and start building out that plan. We call it our implementation session. And that can take 5, 10 plus hours building out that plan, because we really focus on a lot of time. And then ongoing, we make sure we meet with our clients at least every year, more if we need to, and then we're always available for questions as that comes up. So that's just a little glimpse. Again, we can get in further on that call if that's something that you're looking to learn more about, but that's just an overview of what that could look like. Another questions about us is, what is your fee? So most of our clients pay about 1% or less all in, depending on what their situation is, what their complexity is, how much assets they have. And so that's, again, something we can talk through further based on your specific situation. Are there limits on Roth conversion? Okay, looks like Tom, so this will be the last one I cover. So there is no limits on Roth conversions. You can convert every single dollar you wanted to. I always tell a funny story. We had a guy, $3 million. He came in and seen us. He said, I want to convert it all over. That was an awesome webinar you did. And we had to educate them and tell them, it's probably not the best decision. Let's look to do this over a certain amount of years. So since 2010, there's been no limits on Roth conversions. So you could, but should you, right? It's kind of like that idea of putting your hand on the hot stove. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that would be the answer there. But understand that Roth conversions are different than Roth contribution. There is limits on Roth contributions, right? There's only so much you can put in each year. If you make too much, you can't contribute. You have to have earned income. Conversion is different. There's a different set of rules. None of those rules apply with the Roth conversion. So hopefully that can be helpful for you there. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. We're looking forward to doing that discovery call with many of you who have had that schedule, and looking forward to seeing how we can help further. Again, there's some questions there I didn't get to. I'll make sure I personally reach out to you either here today or tomorrow, and making sure that you get all your answers addressed there. So if you need anything else, feel free to reach out. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day here. Bye now.